Okay, for today's assignment, we are considering the scenario provided from the perspectives of chapter 6, 7, 8, and 9. To kind of briefly go through these chapters, chapter 6 is titled All Things Considered. What it basically does, it allows us to reach a moral decision by considering the four major ethical theories instead of just focusing on one, because one theory might tell you the decision is right or wrong, and another theory might give you something different. So this chapter encourages us to focus on all four. The argument presented is similar to the argument in chapter 7, which is a technique called argument by analog, where you take two arguments that have, even though they're completely different arguments, they do have common similarities, and you either arrive at a decision for an argument that you're not familiar with based on the decision you arrived at for the argument that you are more familiar with. And that kind of goes into line in line with your reasoning and being consistent, which leads us to chapter 8, which chapter 8 kind of covers being able to balance what he called a moral equilibrium, where you're balancing your intuition with these theories and making sure that your decision is consistent. So to address the actual assignment here, we're looking at state requirements for driver's license, which is the state's way to ensure that everyone on the road should at least know how to operate a vehicle, should at least know the rules and regulations that surrounds owning and operating a vehicle. And then this is a way to make sure that the public and other drivers are safe and reducing accidents and things of that nature. And then the argument kind of gets parallel to another argument, which says, well, if we think that it's good to regulate people that drive because of the safety of other people, then we should also regulate people's ability to have children because of the safety of the kids. So, in other words, for you to be able to have kids, you have to prove that you're stable, you're emotionally, financially, psychologically at a good place to be able to have a child. Yeah, this is a good example of a moral analog, argument by analog, where we're comparing two scenarios that share similarities. But my position here in applying these is first, let's kind of go through considering all things for each argument. So if we look at the utilitarian argument, which is a consequence-based argument, which tells us that the consequence of a bad decision for the driver can outweigh any benefit that driver might have by retaining a driver's license. Therefore, in that scenario, you would revoke the driver's license. Kantianism is based on respecting other people's interests. So if you want to respect other people's interests, other drivers' interests, then making sure that other people or a particular driver that does not abide by the rules might damage their vehicle or cause them harms, you might also reach the same agreement. However, if you want to respect the interests of the driver in question's family, maybe he's the provider of the family, he needs his driver's license to work, then you might reach the argument that maybe you should revoke his driver's license. The same goes for character and also relationship. Okay, what relationship does the driver have with the state or society? In other words, is this someone that constantly does this? Does they have a reputation for doing this? And these kind of things can help us decide whether they should keep or lose their driver's license. Now, when we try to apply the same argument, we could technically, for bringing a child into this world, the only issue now is you have to consider that most of the time, not always, most of the time, it takes two people to make a child. So now you're going to have to subject both people to be able to prove whether they are worthy of raising a child, because maybe one parent or one person might be more stable than the other, but they are insisting on still bringing a child into this world. Or you're going to mostly focus on the mother because she's the child bearer. So this gets a little bit more murky. But from a consequential standpoint, you can argue that the consequences that a child would suffer by a negligent parent or negligent mother would outweigh that mother's rights or that mother's interest in bringing a child into this world. And these things kind of go on and on and on. But for the sake of time, I'm not really going to go through those. But what I will say is that both scenarios are similar, but they do have dissimilarities. Well, one scenario is only considering one person's action and one person's ability. Therefore, that person is solely responsible. Where the other scenario is not when you're dealing with bringing a child into this world, it's not always that straightforward. Thank you.